So you're here as you want to instantly win your games out of nowhere, and I'm going to show you how to do it with a deck that consistently combos off for some mega damage without even needing to attack your opponent. Hey everyone, Hex here, and today something a bit different as I'm jumping straight into some gameplay footage as our combo takes a while to get going. The deck is very simple in build and I'll explain the key combo pieces as they come up. Full deck breakdown at the end of the video today, but as we have the combo in our hand, let's take a quick look. So today we're casting a monstrous Melek, then we're going to be flinging it straight at our opponent's face. Melek is a 5-cost weird detective whose power and toughness are both equal to twice the amount of instants and sorceries in your graveyard. So our game plan today should be pretty obvious. We're going to fill the yard with spells, normally at least 10, and then fling it for lethal. So, like I said, the game plan is pretty straightforward here. So a lot of our cards in our deck are going to be cantrippy. Cards like Brass's Tunnel Grinder here, fantastic, get a chance to discard as many cards as we can, ideally discarding instants and sorceries, but can't be too picky if you've only got lands in your hand. Whilst you're here though, and if you haven't already, go ahead and like and subscribe below. Needless to say, I really appreciate all the support that you all give this channel. So this deck has been doing extremely well for me today. We can do a lot of damage out of nowhere. Opponent seems to have 120 odd cards in their deck today, so not sure what we're up against, but we can only play who's in front of us. We will play Consider here, and I think we can put that Brotherhood's End back into our graveyard. And another Consider here. Burn down the house, straight into the grave, filling up our graveyard. We need at least 10 in our graveyard normally, but there's a lot of cards these days that gain life, so in this particular case we're going to have to do 22 damage. So we find a backup Melek. Not too bad if opponent has instant speed removal when we go to fling it with our Sell-Sword. So like I said, the full deck breakdown will be at the end of the video today, but our deck has a very simple game plan. You can kind of put in whatever cards you feel like you want to. For me, it's a little bit of removal, a lot of drawing cards and discarding. Not worrying too much about the opponent's board. Getting to burn down the house when we need to get out of trouble here. Put it with a Serum Snare, so maybe some kind of toxic control deck, but we're not giving them any creatures to play around with. They do have 2 mana open though, so although we could throw down Melek now and fling it at our opponent for potential lethal, they could easily have a counter spell or a removal spell, so let's just keep playing until they tap out. They're bound to tap out shortly, and then we can fire off our combo. In the meantime, we'll just keep filling up our graveyard in case they start gaining some life. And Dissipate, fantastic, because we can now hopefully counter any removal they have. So we should be kind of free in a minute to fire off this Melek. And Vraska's full. Okay, so yeah, they're hoping we have creatures, but we just don't have them. They've only got 2 mana, 3 mana now. Come on, play a spell, play a spell. You know you want to. They want to Serum Snare our Grinder. Okay, well, let's just dissipate that. More cards in our graveyard. And let's go for Melek now. They've got 1 blue mana, so they could have a Fading Hope, but we have a second Callous Sell-Sword for next turn. 24-24, straight at our opponent's face. And yeah, that is the combo. Alright, another game here. This time we are on the draw. Hand looks relatively fine, exactly how I'd hope it to be. Opponent with a Boros land, and yeah, instantly gaining life. So much life gain going on at the moment in Standard, it seems. You can never only do 20 damage to your opponent to kill them. They do play a Virtuoso, and Consider finds an island, and I kind of do want to get the land. We just need 6 mana for this deck really to pop off. Once we've done that, we can start discarding them, but definitely getting rid of that Virtuoso, which can get very much out of hand very quickly, especially as our removal really only does 3 damage. Opponent with a Phoenix Chick there, and another Virtuoso. And luckily, we draw a Pyre off the top there, so not a bad little turn for us here, as we can just pick off their 1-1 double striker again. And it's got to be pretty annoying for our opponent, but we are kind of out of removal now. And Impact out. Okay. Alright, so they're going to go wide, which is a good reason to get Burn Down the House down on turn 5. But they're going to make a Gnome, and we find another land. So completely different game for us here. We haven't got any of our combo pieces. We're almost playing a proper control deck here. And I think what we'll do is we will Otawara their Anime pack out. I'm going to do it in their upkeep. I do want them to play the card this turn, and I want to play it before attacks because I want to blow it up with Burn Down the House. If we bounce it now, they may not play it end of turn. It's the card I'm a little bit worried about. So although we take an extra damage from that gnome, we can just burn down the house here. And fingers crossed, we get to stabilize a little bit here. I can't believe we're still on 14 life. Okay, Intrude on the Mind. So this card is great in this deck. It's a 5-cost instant that says you reveal the top 5 cards of your library, separate them into 2 piles, and then your opponent chooses one of those piles, puts that pile into your hand and the other into your graveyard. Then you get to create a 0/0 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying, then put a +1/+1 counter on it for each card put into your graveyard this way. Clearly, we want cards in our graveyard, but we also want to make sure that we hit our cards, so really interesting card for our opponents to have to deal with, and perfect for our deck today. So back to the action here, and the opponent really isn't doing much. I'm wondering if they just got a bunch of removal, and we haven't really given them any spells or any targets for that. So we can keep curating, deducing, and we're just looking for our Melek here. We have our Sell-Sword in our hand. We still have our Intrude of the Mind. It's a really good way to surprise block your opponent's creatures as well. As it does create a Thopter, but we will keep doing our cantrips here. And opponent may or may not know what we're up to here. So the deck that I seem to have had the most problems with are decks that are playing white. Things that can remove your Melek at instant speed are pretty annoying for us. We do find our Melek here with our Intrude, so I want to make sure we kind of get given that. So let's keep it separate from the counter spell, because I'm pretty sure the opponent won't want the counter spell in our hand if they know it's there. And yeah, they indeed give us our Melek, so we have our combo assembled. But yeah, opponent does have a lot of open mana. They may have been happy with us to have the Melek because they have a removal spell. So we'll again slow roll this, keep attacking them with our Thopter here, dropping them down to 18. They may also have a load of Ancestral Anger type effects, as they were playing the Virtuoso, and they did use one earlier on a really cheeky little play on Anime Pakal. What would be ideal for us is a second copy of Melek, so if the first one doesn't work, we have another one available. And they deal with our Thopter, so let's use some of our draw cards here and surveil cards, see what we can find, consider. So you can just see how much this deck works, how it is so easy to fill your graveyard. Now there's always cards that exile graveyards and pick off cards from graveyards, but not every deck can deal with every deck. And what I've noticed about this one today, as I've gone 9-3 on the ladder, is that unless your opponent knows what they're doing, they're going to get killed very, very quickly. We have 2 copies of Melek here, so I'm going to fire one off now. And yeah, they may be able to remove this at instant speed when we target it with our Callous Sell-Sword, or they may not. Let's have a look. So 32-32. No, opponent sees the writing on the wall and scoops it up. Alright then, on the draw here, and this hand seems very reasonable, so we will keep this one. We have our grinder here to basically ditch our entire hand if we need to. It's the best time to drop it is turn 3. Opponent is on a banned deck, it looks like at the moment. They did play the Yavimaya Coast untapped turn 1 though, so they may have a 1-drop blue or green spell, maybe a Fading Hope in their deck. But they play a Spirited Companion, and we'll just deduce here, draw a card, and we get a clue. And you know, I'm just going to get rid of my hand. I think it is pretty bad. The Pyres are maybe not too bad, but we must be able to draw into something a bit better than what we've got. We'll keep the Sell-Sword as it's one of our combo pieces, and we have a lot more card draw in our hand now. Although we don't have the Pyres, I was kind of hoping to pick up a Brotherhood's End or a Burn Down the House there. So opponent looks like they're on a 5-colour deck here. So yeah, Invasion's Zendikar points to a domain style deck. Don't know how we'll get on with this. We try and win without actually attacking, so if they play anything big later on in the game, don't really care too much. like a Traxxas or something, as we find an Intrude on the mind. Well, right now, my main goal is to find Melek, and then just see where we are. Play the untapped land here to maximise our turn. We can eat our clue and play a couple of spells. Opponent is on 7 mana already, but they only have a 1/1 dog on the battlefield, so this Invasion of Zendikar is probably not going to be defeated this turn. Who knows? And they might be thinking that we've got counter magic available, which we do in Dissipate, but I don't really want to use that card if I can help it. I'd like to draw into something a little bit better with some of our draw spells. So we will lead here with a Consider. Spell 1 and draw a card. Sell-Sword, Graveyard. Not the best card for the grave, as it's a creature. We find our Brotherhood's End. Could be good later. We'll play the other Consider, though. And see if we can spell away something else. Restless Spire. Okay, we do need lands, but we may just draw them naturally anyway. And untapped lands would be better for us at the moment. Well, there's Burn Down the House, so I feel slightly better about that. I will want to use keep the Dissipate open in case they drop an Atraxa or an Atali. And there's our Melek, okay. And opponent has a Leyline Binding. Alright, well, they're going for our Grinder. Well, they don't know, but that's absolutely nothing to do with our plans anymore. Melek a 10/10. But we've got to be careful of the Binding. It is an instant speed threat that can nab our Melek before the Callous Sell-Sword resolves. So I can't just be firing it off willy-nilly and just need to wait for the opponent to almost tap out. And we actually have to go to discard, which isn't too bad for us really, because we need to discard some instants or sorceries. And I think Brotherhood's End is the card that is most weak in my hand right now. Opponent with Herd Migration to make a whole ton of 3/3s. Alright, well, we can burn them down or we can Dissipate. Interesting choice here. Gonna let it go through because they're gonna presumably attack this Invasion of Zendikar here, transform it, and then we can take everything out next turn with Burn Down the House. This does give them an extra mana available this turn as their Awakened Skyclave has haste. But yeah, we're still on 19. And we'll Deduce here, and we find a Curate, okay. So we will certainly surveil away a couple of cards. Yeah, we'll get rid of those two, and we find another Brotherhood's End and a tap land. Alright, well, if we're going to get a tap land, that was the time. Brotherhood's End on the top. We're going to burn down the house now. We have another one in our hands, so that should be okay. And it's going to be a big swing here as we take out a whole ton of the opponent's creatures. But we're getting there. I can't believe we're still on 19 life. So we are shields down a little bit on Atraxa here. There it is. Melek currently, though, a 22/22. So I am worried about Leyline Binding. We don't actually have any targets for them, so they might not be prioritizing that card. So we'll see what they find. If they play Leyline Binding, I don't know what I'm going to do. Okay, well, they find a Plains. Alright, and they tap out with the Spirited Companion. Alright, so the door is open here for us. We can play Melek, a 22/22, and we can get around Atraxa's 7/7 lifelink by just flinging it straight at our opponent's face for another victory. So, as promised, if you've made it this far, let me know in the comments, and here is your full deck tech. I went with Izzet, but you could certainly go with Jeskai today, as all of our cards help with filling our graveyard quickly, but allow us just enough interaction to stay alive. We only need normally around 10 instants and sorceries in our graveyard, then it's just about making sure we are alive, and Melek is alive when we get to fling it. Games like the last one, where our opponent must have thought they'd stabilise with an Atraxa around, are exactly why I gravitate towards combo decks, and flinging big creatures is a surefire way to get those wins. Apart from Melek, this could easily be a pretty budget-friendly deck, and I may just do that in the future, but for now, this is what I went with today. As of speaking, I'm about 12/6, which isn't too bad for a combo deck on the ladder. As I mentioned earlier, consider subscribing if you haven't. Let me know of any combos you may want to see in the future in the comments below, and I'll speak to you again in the next video.